Lieutenant, I can't stop calling you Lieutenant. Once a lieutenant, you're always a lieutenant.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Steve Hauck, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so Andrew says, how many 13-year-olds have you put in prison?
Zero. Zero is the number.
And so there are, I've read, did a lot of research on this yesterday, several cases where kids have been placed in correctional facilities. Rikers Island is one of the places. There's a story about a 16-year-old who probably did some really, really bad things. Was just recently ordered to be removed from the adult quarters because putting a 16-year-old in with adults in prison is probably not the best way to correct. However, you're saying that's rare and almost maybe non-existent, you believe.
I will tell you that my experience with New York City is limited, but it's a sort of different animal altogether down there than most of the other part of the state. So it's difficult for me to intelligently speak about their system. But I can tell you up here, you're not the. I think it's a little bit disingenuous on some people's part to say that, you know, we've got all these young kids that are first-time offenders, nonviolent offenders sitting in prison. That's just not the case. I'd love to see the number on 16 to 18-year-olds that are in prison, how many times they've committed crimes or what they were convicted of, because you're not seeing people that commit what you call a petty offense. So let's say a nonviolent misdemeanor sitting in prison for first-time offenders. It just doesn't happen. The state has so many mechanisms in place.
This is by no means first-time offenders.
Right.
These are
or perhaps if they are first-time offenders, it was a pretty violent crime.
Oh, these
to
are.
Put them there.
Oh, let's. This is not about a kid that's just showing up in jail that's gotten in trouble. Right. I mean, we go through many layers of these are violent crimes committed by children.
Or perhaps they were charged with a felony and reduced to a misdemeanor and convicted of a misdemeanor, and then you're going to look as the conviction's a misdemeanor, but really they were charged with, say, perhaps a violent felony or some other type of felony.
I think the cases we're talking about are rape, are murder cases, and we don't see a lot of it up here. We don't see it, but if you look at the country as a whole, it does exist. I mean, there are stories of kids. Actually, there's a story about a kid that I found that was under the age of 10 that killed someone and was tried as an adult. But in New York State, it's 13 to 17. 16 and 17 are different. Correct me if I'm wrong. That if you're 16 or 17 years old, you're already, if you commit a serious crime, you're already considered to be tried as an adult, unless a judge determines you'll be tried under youthful offender status. So I believe that's what the statute that I read yesterday says.
Anybody that's reached their 16th birthday,
you'd
be charged with a crime just like an adult would. So misdemeanor, felony, it doesn't matter.
Unless
then you go in front of a judge, and a judge, most likely 16, 17-year-old, is going to immediately seal the record for the possibility of youthful offender. And then it goes through a process of review to see if they meet all the criteria to be a youthful offender. But that's where it starts. So you'd be charged, you'd be booked, you'd probably be put in lockup for the night or given an appearance ticket, and then from there the judge pretty much has the determination as to
what this is really. Let's call this what it really is. This is New York City Democrats that are really pushing for this, and also some of these upstate Democrats. And the reason they're pushing for it is because it is somewhat predominant. It does happen in New York City. Right. And it's a different world, right? And you have a lot of 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds committing violent crimes. And it's something we don't see up here. That's why, like you said, this is not something we normally see up here.
Right. You do see the violent crimes. You do. And, and I listened to the DA, Scott McNamara, and he had a great point about, why is this sort of being crowbarred into the budget? I think this needs to be reviewed, and I don't know where the governor's office is getting their advice, but it seems to me that perhaps the district attorneys need to get involved across the state to say, hey, listen, this is what our experiences are, and this is maybe a way to address it. Because I agree. I think everybody agrees that you don't want to see 16 and 17-year-old because they're kids. You don't want to see them in jail. I think everybody agrees with that. The question is this really the right way to sort of keep that from happening? Because there's other aspects of this I think some people perhaps aren't talking about. Maybe they thought about it, haven't talked about it, is most of the police departments, and I think probably the prosecutor's office and certainly the courts are not set up to handle this many juvenile, because that's what they're going to be,
Right.
juvenile cases. So
And that seems to be the argument from Republicans.
It's gonna be
saying
huge
this is
money.
going to be a huge cost. It's going to be a huge problem. Now, ultimately, and when it comes to kids, should we be talking about costs? I'm not sure.
no, I'm not. No,
We're-
I think our youth is more important than the
there's
money aspect.
But this is a typical Governor Cuomo plan that doesn't. We're going to force you to do this. We have no idea how you're going to pay for it. Good luck with that.
Right.
'Cause
See,
that's another unfunded mandate. From,
Utica,
from the
right?
state.
Utica has no detention facility for juveniles. So if one's charged with a crime, they go in front of a judge, and the
Yeah.
judge says you need to be remanded until your next court date.
Yeah.
We have to put them in a car, drive them to secure detention. The next day or 2 days later, when they have court, go pick them up.
Where is that,
drive them
by the
back?
way?
Well, you have a couple. You have some Syracuse, some Albany, but they
Okay.
get filled, and now they're going to be filled really quickly.
Right.
So you have to drive, pick them up, then bring them back, and it's a back and forth process. The time and
I have
money.
a local attorney saying you can't go to prison on a misdemeanor conviction.
That's true.
Local jail only. We totally understand that.
Absolutely.
And when we're talking, what we're really talking about is kids that are committing, the 15-year-old that shoots his father and they decide to try him as an adult. Or even worse, multiple crimes. It started out as a misdemeanor, and then, there's a rape case, and then there's a murder and a stabbing, these gang-type related things. And a lot of it's prevalent downstate, and a lot of it's prevalent in the tough areas of New York. But those are the ones that are ending up at Rikers. And the question is, and the argument is, no matter how bad their crime, at age 15 or 14 or 13 or even 16 or 17, should they be placed in the same place as criminals that are 40, 50 years old?
No, and I don't think so. And I also don't think that if you've got somebody 16, 17-year-old and they're committing, say a nonviolent misdemeanor, that they should be shipped off to Attica. But I don't think that's what you have happening.
Well,
I just don't think you do.
It has happened, but I think that I thought the governor signed an executive order in 2015 that would have solved this problem. Now we're arguing it all over again, and it's being argued over the fact that we should not now forget where they're going. We shouldn't try them as adults. But it wasn't until 2015. Now, I don't know if this is just grandstanding by the governor, but in 2015 he signed an executive order saying that these kids should not be housed at the same place as adults.
That shocks me. I'm not disputing it, but let me ask you.
Brindisi's coming up in a minute. I want to get some clarification from him as well.
Yeah.
Why has this become such a big issue all of a sudden?
For instance, there's one case I think of, and I'm not necessarily looking for the outcome of that. There was a case where a young teen, I think it was 13 or 14, had murdered someone in his family by a gun. Anyway, he was convicted. But I could have sworn that he was sent to, I don't know what you'd call it. It wasn't juvenile detention, I don't think, but it was not a prison. He was being sent someplace till he was 17 or 18, and then from there would be a reassessment, and he would likely go to prison after that. Can you talk about such facilities? I know I'm kind of just throwing this out there, but if a 15-year-old's convicted of a rape or a murder, do they go to state prison?
Yeah, certainly not my expertise, but I don't believe that in the juvenile system there's a sort of maximum security, which if somebody was convicted of murder, I imagine you want them in a very secure facility.
But if they're tried as an adult, they're not going through the juvenile
right,
system.
That's
This is, let me read you this, just this quick story to clear this up. This is from the Daily News, and I believe this goes back to, this is July of this year. After years of abuse as they languished on Rikers Island, the city's youngest inmates will now be placed in a new facility in the Bronx under a long-term plan announced Thursday by the de Blasio administration. The plan, officials say, would spare 16 and 17-year-olds from the harsh treatment that comes with living among older, sometimes more hardened inmates, and bring them services more suitable to their age. I mean, these stories are, this is just this past year.
And I think that's reasonable.
So, I agree.
They're kids. Even though they might have committed a violent crime, they still are children.
At what point, though, I mean, we always see this. It's like, boy, that kid, what a piece of work that kid is. Well, he's gone through this. He's gone through this. He's gone through this. You got to feel for him. At what point do we stop feeling sorry for a deviant, and all of a sudden now it's like, hey, You're old enough to know better now. Now you're toast.
A 16 and 17-year-old now is much different than a 16 and 17-year-old was 15 years ago. That's so but that doesn't mean that they're because they've talked about with juveniles their brains develop differently and they don't sometimes understand the consequences of their actions at a young age as opposed to say somebody in their 30s or 40s. That's something obviously for a psychologist to say. But the thing is that I don't think we're really talking. If you're housing them where adults are, that's a problem with the correctional aspect of it. And that's not what they're really saying here.
No,
they're saying that
this is
in
about
the court system, and that's a totally different animal. If you've got a problem here, then address the problem, fix it.
Right.
If you don't have the money and you're lumping everybody into the same cell, well, then that's a problem on your end.
I don't know why we would think that the family court system is so busy. I mean, give me a break. Right?
Well,
really?
Never worked in family court, but
is it that busy?
That I don't believe that they have the mechanisms in place to be able to handle this the way it sits right now.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But the police departments don't either because our juvenile aid units are only so big, so you're going to have to double and triple the size of them. To be able to handle the caseload. And then the courts, because now the courts are going to be busier, so you've got to have those people. And what about the probation officers? So because because records are sealed for juveniles.
Right.
And so, just to give you an explanation of how it works, let's say you have a 15-year-old that's charged with a crime. I couldn't go in and look at anything about them. I can't look at their name, their date of birth.
Unless he's tried as an adult.
Tried as an adult is totally different.
And that's what this issue is. That's what this issue is all about.
Right. But a normal 15-year-old, I couldn't go in and look at. But essentially, what they're going to do is take those 16 and 17-year-olds and make those records private as well. And now I go back and say, what if you have somebody that's 17, they get charged now? Are they going to go with those old records and now make all those records?
I mean, I hate to say, but I think they would be kind of grandfathered in, so to speak. I
haven't seen the law to be able to know what they've thought about that.
Let's find out. We're going to talk to Mark Butler coming up because this is one of these issues that they're all fighting over. They say this gang of 8, these 8 independent Democrats that are caucusing with the Republicans, this is the issue. They won't budge on this issue. It's either going to get passed or the budget doesn't pass. Well, that's what we're sitting on.
It seems like, and again, that the governor's office is sort of holding the budget hostage
with policy.
Under this one, right?
This and Uber is mixed in there as well.
Set it aside. Make set the budget in place, and then make a real educated decision on. Moving forward, because something does need to be done. It's just a question of, do you really need to rush this through the system?
Good point. Hold on.